Well, here we are again. We look at the continuing into the appreciation module. This is Charlie, of course, in Boulder, and I'm a little upset today. We had this big mass killing yesterday, but life goes on. Let's get on with it. So this is an interesting way to think about the world. This is an interesting storyline shift, basically into having enough. So I had a lot of experience with this, but I'll just share one story that I think is kind of fun. I mentioned before that when I worked at NASA in the front office, the administrator was a very blue, very smart guy, but very difficult interpersonally. As I saw him, his basic issues were he lacked empathy and accountability, and you might associate those characteristics with another current political figure in the U.S. That's up to you. Anyway, so I asked people about what I could do to support him, and they said you've got to be there for him as best you can be and be in as rational, centered place as possible. So I wrote my life vision and purposes down on a piece of paper, and those days I had like a 40-minute subway ride into to downtown, and so I would meditate, reflect on, focus on these items on my way into work. So when I arrived, I was very, very able to deal with the stresses of the day and protect my health and well-being in doing so. So the first draft I wrote down, I want to be wealthy, and I realized that the time I had the most stuff, I felt the poorest. And also, this is what's called a scarcity mindset. If you're always trying to get more, there's never enough. As I talked before, money and other extrinsic things don't fill you up. So I changed it. I said I want to live in the experience of wealth, irrespective of how much actual wealth I have. This is the abundance mindset. And with this mindset, it was easy to take my relatives around the world on travel with us, pay for kids' school when they needed it, make my time free. Because here's how you think of these things. It's about the opportunity cost. What's this mean? This means that the cost of doing anything is the cost of what you couldn't have because you did them. And in my case, the cost was there's nothing that I want that I can't have. And so therefore the cost is zero. This is a very famous Native American chief Sitting Bull. Judge people not by how much they have, but how much they give. This is a reason that I've expressed my admiration for Warren Buffett. He gave away half of his wealth to the Gates Foundation and lives like a very ordinary person, even though he's an incredibly wealthy person. Again, much ancient wisdom. Epicurus, the Greeks, wealth consists not in having many possessions, but few wants. This is how basically my wife and I live. I love this because it directly confronts a storyline rampant in American society and probably most of the world. If you're not happy with what you already have, how could you be happier with more? And I saw this on a greeting card in Boulder. So giving supports a life of abundance and the happiness of serotonin. Early on, I had a monthly budget for $50 a month to give stuff away. What would I do with it? I unexpectedly invite someone to go to breakfast on Sunday, or I'd take colleagues to lunch for no reason. And I really enjoyed doing this. So when I moved to Boulder, I didn't know anybody in the city, and a professor in the English department befriended me, Ron Billingsley, because he was advisor to another leadership program. And he and his wife would invite me over to their home for holiday dinners like New Year's or Thanksgiving, and very private people. And he'd open the refrigerator door and point to a bottle of Cordon Rouge champagne and say, "I got one." He'd also add that this is not for you, Charlie. This is the wife and I are going to enjoy this after you're gone. I'm going to take this up in the bedroom, and well, you know what. So I left the university. I lost contact with Ron, moved 10 miles outside of town. And one day, for no reason on Outlook, his birthday popped up. So I went to Junko and said, "This is an abundance opportunity. I want to I'm going to buy 2 cases of Cordon Rouge champagne and put them on Ron's doorstep with no note. What do you think?" She says, "Great." So the rest of the day went by, nothing. Next day I see caller ID, it's Ron. So I pick up the phone and say, "Hey Ron, how are you? How's the boys?" He said, "It was you." I said, "Hey, are you still at the university?" "It was you." No matter what I said, his answer every time was, "It was you." So I said, "Okay, I'm busted. How'd you do it?" He said, "Well, I made a list of the people who knew when my birthday was, and it wasn't very long. I put a check mark by the people who knew about the Cordon Rouge, and it got smaller. Then I said, who'd be crazy enough to do this? It was you." So I've had more fun telling this story than I ever would have had drinking that champagne. And so the idea of giving away stuff, like I give away all the intellectual property for 4D, I give away my time. What's it about? It's about serotonin, the neurotransmitter of happiness. From Bob Dylan, the famous American songwriter, singer, what's money? A person that is a success if they get up in the morning, get to bed at night, and in between they do what they want to do. That's exactly what I'm doing. I love doing this work. So I was doing a workshop in Shanghai, and the participant raised his hand and said, "Charlie, after I told the Ron Billingsley story, he said, Charlie, you can do that kind of thing, but you have to understand that at the end of the month, I don't have any money left over. I'm here living in a shared apartment in Shanghai. I've got my wife and children and her parents in an apartment in Beijing, and I'm just absolutely broke. I can't possibly contemplate a gift like that." So I thought about this and thought, it's an interesting thought. What about gestures? I did some research and found out gestures are far more impactful than material gifts. And that's consistent with my own experience. When I travel in China, I really enjoy it when someone will carry my little bag, even though it's small, or open doors. Or in China, it's very common to get standing ovations right when we take breaks during the workshops. Or in the US, I get these handshakes and hugs from people. So this really has great meaning for me, and thank all of you who've done that. Think about the symphony. It's interesting. But Junko and I enjoy classical music. We watch it almost every night on television during dinner. And if you look at the symphony, it highlights the conductor. It doesn't typically highlight any member of the orchestra. And the conductor does not say a word. Everything is done with gestures. So powerful. Think about gestures as expressions of appreciation rather than saying "I love you" or whatever. Show it by doing their job. So, like most married couples, Junko has her jobs. I have my jobs. And for example, one of mine is taking trash cans down, and it's a long way. Used to be long way down the driveway to the street. So I'd get up in the morning and realize it's trash day, and open the garage. Trash cans are gone. She's taken them down. Or it might be her night to make dinner. And so I simply step in and start it and finish without, just as a nice thing for her. Gesture is very powerful. And again, why don't you take a colleague to lunch sometimes for no reason, back when COVID's over and we can do lunches again, or give somebody a helping hand, be friendly like Ron was for me, and make jokes. A ham sandwich walks into a bar and orders a beer. The bartender says, "I'm sorry, we don't serve food here." So pay attention to what you're grateful for. Remember, where attention goes, power flows. So here's some of the things I'm grateful for. When I was much younger, I won the lottery. Oh, really? Not that lottery. NASA hired me out of the blue. Best thing ever happened to me, except marrying Junko. And I've got lots of education other people paid for, the 4D systems. I'm grateful for that. And this is the end of a workshop in China where people are reading poems about me or cheering me. So this is great stuff. My family life, my wife Junko. This is a Japanese New Year's dinner, and we go down and buy the ingredients in the Denver market. My daughter and son, and now I've got two granddaughters. And I'm grateful that I can eat healthy food. Think about this every day. I can choose anything I want that's good for me and eat it. I'm grateful to travel the world. Here we are in Egypt a couple of years ago, and mostly just to be able to get out of bed and contribute every day. It's wonderful. So you can choose to focus your attention on what you have or don't have. You can choose to focus on the glass being half full or half empty. And so when I worked at with TRW, I'd come in and meet my my colleagues there, and everybody's sad down the dumps. Well, what happened? Well, they lost a proposal, or some management did something they didn't like. And I would say, okay, let's go around the room. Let me ask each of you to state sequentially, starting with you, Shirley, what is it you're grateful for to be able to work in business development in TRW? And people could do it. And we go next, next, next. 5 minutes later, the mood shifted and everybody's feeling good again. They're re-energized. They're ready to go back to work and take on the day. So I have in workshops asked people to write this in their workbook, and it takes 5 or 10 minutes. And then I think it's really important to share. So they get in their huddles, as we talked about earlier, eye contact, face to face, group of four. This is energizing these special mirror neurons in our brains. And very important, do not appreciate a person. That comes later. And so I asked the group to police each other and how they language this. And here's the way we want to language it. I'm grateful for these circumstances or opportunities. Why is this important? It's important so we don't drift into appreciating a person, because that's the next step. That's the behavior step. This is the mindset step. And also, we don't let people get into a lengthy story. We don't have time for it. It's just not productive. And notice any emotions that come up. And as each person finishes, I like to encourage people to give a little appreciation. It brings a smile to everybody. It brings a little glad group. And more importantly, I can track the progress of each of the groups by listening to the applause, appreciation, applause. This is especially useful when I'm doing things in a foreign language. And if I see a group that doesn't seem to be moving ahead, I'll go with my translator, find out what's happening, give them a little stimulus. This is a timer that will show on the screen. I don't time these things in the sense that I think these have to run to completion. I let them go until everybody finishes, everybody participates. But it's a way for me just to be taking track of how the workshop time is being used. Now to the behavior. So I think it's best, if you can, to appreciate something that people appreciate about themselves. I got a big life lesson in this when I divorced my first wife, maybe 30 years ago. And I went and told her I want a divorce. And she said, I don't know why you want a divorce, because I love you. And I said, I want a divorce because I don't feel loved. So I went to a psychotherapist and said, can you explain this? And she said, yes, maybe I can. What does she appreciate about you? I said, well, she appreciates my prestigious job. I make pretty good money. I'm reliably there for the children and her. I'm a good, dutiful husband. I take care of things around the house. In fact, I probably overcompensate like that. She says, well, that's interesting. And by the way, today I would name that Orange, and she was Orange. So she said, what do you appreciate about yourself? And I said, well, my unconventional thinking, my unusual things I like to do, race sailboats. I tried to play the shakuhachi, things that other people don't typically get interested in. And I love ideas, new ideas. I love to think and love to talk about what I'm thinking about. Says, what does she think about that? Says she hates it. She said, well, there you go. That's it. So if you want to think about their personality, and you might guess what it is, or even without even doing the personality work, what they care about. The greens care about other people. They care about deep values. You can talk to those. The yellows are friendly and likable. You can talk about a relationship aspect with them. The blues are curious and intellectual. Talk about some scientific thing with them if you're able, or some idea. And the oranges are disciplined and organized. So I encourage again, look people in the eye when you do this. It's about the mirror neurons and empathy. Say their name, and I appreciate you for whatever it is. The process completes when they look you in the eye, and this should be continuous throughout, and they say thank you. So, what about people that are the people don't know very well? Well, we've done a couple exercises so people get to know something about them. We've talked earlier about their character and their competencies in an early exercise. That should be a pretty good way to really know something about someone, surely enough to appreciate something. And people who aren't present, if you have energy around this, tell what you appreciate about the person as though they were there, and then say, I'll tell them when I see them. So most groups get into this enthusiastically and have a lot of fun with it. Again, we get back in our huddle, same rules, policing. The languaging is very important. Help everyone do that. By the way, if the first person does the exercise correctly, the rest will typically follow. If the first person does it wrong, and I can listen in, I try and step in and say, wait, please use the language. And we talked about this. Again, emotions. This exercise is interesting. This often brings a lot of tears of joy, I hope. I'm not sure. And again, the applause, and again, the timer. So I said I'd talk about the health benefits of this, and this is to me quite remarkable. This is Dr. Dean Ornish, University of California, San Francisco. He's probably the most prominent doctor in the US for healing illness with diet. And he says this: no other factor in medicine, not diet, not exercise, not genetics, not drugs, not surgery. That's an impressive list. Has a greater positive impact on quality of life and reduction of disease than appreciation. Wow. And I always like to do bookends of this. The other side of this is the effect of anger. We'll look at this when you look at the blamer state, and anger can kill you. Being prone to hostility is really, really deadly. So I'm going to take a pause here, and then we'll go into this business story that I think is very compelling about my first client, Ernst & Young. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in a bit with the next section. Be safe and be well.